Hello everybody, and here is our video for Chapter 11 when we're talking about integrated marketing communications. And what we're really talking about here is integrating all of the messages our customers receive from us to make sure it's one consistent message. So we talk about the 4 P's of marketing, and we've kind of done that. We've talked about the product, the place, and we did that when we talked about retail and how we ship it and all those types of things. We're talking a lot about the promotion in this chapter, and then we'll talk about the price. But it's important for all of these, and we're focusing on keeping this part consistent, a consistent message, but really all 4 of these things need to be consistent. So if we are promoting this as a high quality product, we need to make sure that that message comes across in all of our communication with our consumers. So let's talk a little bit about that. It has been changing a lot. The media landscape changes. Companies are spending more and more money on electronic or non-traditional media. Mobile marketing, out-of-home stuff has really become popular. So this has changed in the last 5 or 10 years from what it used to be. This is just a little graphic to show you the different elements of the marketing mix. And I'm going to just introduce all of these today, but some of these are going to come up in other chapters where we'll spend a little bit more time. So advertising, sales promotion, personal selling, public relations, and direct marketing. And direct marketing, personal selling actually is a form of direct marketing, but we'll talk about direct marketing kind of separate. We'll make personal selling its own little chapter there. So some brief definitions of each of these. Advertising is paid, it's non-personal, we promote the ideas, we have an identified sponsor. Sales promotions are short-term incentives. This says buy our product. In fact, it doesn't always say that. Sometimes it doesn't even say that. This says, buy it now. So we want a short-term call to action there. Personal selling is, again, when we have a salesperson, it's generally a one-to-one or one-to-small group there. Public relations, and we have a different chapter where we'll talk about public relations with sponsorships and that sort of thing. But public relations are generally building up good relations with the public. Generally not paid, so things in the newspaper or community events, those types of things are public relation. And then direct marketing can be direct mail, it can be phone, it can also be internet-based things, web-based things like emails and that sort of thing. So advertising is one of the ones we're going to focus on this one. We pay to get a message out there. It could be television, magazine, internet, direct mail, radio, mobile things, social media, but any of these types of things are different ways. So for one thing, we'd have to decide the message, and then it's a separate decision to decide how we want to get it out there. I'm just going to do an overview of all these, and then we're going to talk about them a little more in depth. And then we also want to talk about the pros and cons of some of these. Again, consumer promotions are short-term incentives. This is to buy it now. Big in business-to-business marketing, we call it trade promotions there, but it's the same thing. And often used with direct marketing, like mailing out coupons or something like that. Games, contests, when McDonald's does the Monopoly games, that goes under promotions. It gets people in and gets them to get the product now. Professional selling, I have a little star here because we're going to have a separate chapter on that one. So we'll talk about that one a little bit later in more detail. Again, used in business to business and business to consumer. I think certain items really require this. Items that are hard to explain are big ticket items like cars, jewelry. You generally see this, insurance, those types of things. Public relations is a little more neutral. Often also, it's a little bit more it's considered objective, so sometimes it has a little more clout, a little more believability than an ad. So like press releases and that kind of things. For a long time, this was kind of ignored, but it's getting recognized as more and more important. And so we'll talk about that and sponsorships and that kind of thing in the next chapter. That'll go with this one. Those two come up in the same chapter. So I am sponsoring a NFL field or an event, and it could be big scale things like the NFL or a NASCAR race, except it's not NASCAR now, but whatever. And or it can be a small thing like a Citibank's mud volleyball tournament or something like that. So those types of things can really help, and they have become a more and more important part of the promotion mix. Direct marketing, we'll talk about in this chapter. You can target a very specific group. That's one of its things. It can be highly customized, highly personalized. It is kind of intrusive, and people tend to ignore it. So think about the do not call, and how much people just throw out the junk mail. I mean, I don't know about you, but you can tell it's junk, and you just throw it out. And so people do get sick of this, and they can really ignore that. So that can definitely minimize its effectiveness. Telemarketing is by phone, so that's direct marketing by phone. It can be expensive, but it can be effective. The do not call registry that we talked about here does not block charitable organizations, so they can still call even if they're on do not call. So it is still big for them. Again, with caller ID and stuff, it's really cut into their effectiveness, but it is still out there and a big thing for a lot of people. Direct response advertising, those are the infomercials you see on TV. It can be internet as well, but it says call now. If you call within the next 30 minutes, you get blah, blah, blah. So again, it's trying to get a response right away rather than just think about this later. So that's the infomercials and different types of things that you'll see on TV or the internet. It is cheaper than some of those other ones if you can break through the media clutter there. So all these different things are part of the promotion mix. How do I decide what I'm going to use? And so it depends on the budget, it depends on the product, it depends how your consumers want to receive their information, and what medias are available. Some of it depends on regulations depending on your product. So all of these things are going to factor into what combination of these you're going to use. And most companies will use all of these to some extent. Some people just rely a little more heavily on some parts than others. So this is a little summary of the communication process. So again, we're trying to communicate with our customers. So the sender is the company in this case, right? And the receiver is the customer or the potential customer. Oh, it says that right there. I probably didn't have to write that. So the sender encodes the message into pictures or words. It goes through a channel, so whether that's the ad or the in-store, and then the receiver decodes it, and that's how they interpret it. And you probably noticed that two people can see the same thing and interpret it very differently. And so even though it was encoded the same way for everybody, people decode it differently based on their experiences and based on their perceptions and all those types of things. So the sender can control how they encode it. They cannot control how they decode it. And sometimes they consider there's this little black box here that's the consumer's mind, and we really don't know what's happening in there. There's interference that interferes with our ability to send that message. So people being distracted by things, other ads that are coming there, people's opinions of things, all these things can interfere with our ability to send that message. The feedback usually comes in the response or the action from the customer. Do they buy the product or not? And that's generally how we interpret how successfully that message came across there. In order to, again, have this consistent message, we want to identify at the beginning what our unique selling proposition is. So this is what's different about ours, the specific thing that stands out from us, and you have to narrow it down pretty specifically, but this is what you want to emphasize in your message to your consumers. What's different about ours, and you probably don't have a lot of time to get their attention and get that message through. So if you can be concise and you can set yourself apart from the competitors with this unique selling proposition, you want to make sure you communicate that in your messages. So this is a little graphic that you can see I took from a previous textbook, but I really like it here. And so these are the steps of the advertising, getting that advertising out there. The first is setting the objectives. What are you trying to accomplish here? What message are you trying to communicate? What action are you trying to communicate here? Once you set your objectives, you set the budget, and we'll talk about these different types of budgets. Then you have to actually decide the message that you're going to send. So what message do I want to get across, and how am I going to send that across? So what media am I going to use? And we have lots of decisions there. And then you go back and you evaluate. Did it have the sales impact? Did it get the message across that you want? And did you achieve what you were trying to achieve according to your objective? So let's talk about those. Let's talk about the objectives first. We go into a little bit here about the demand for a product. The demand for a specific product is a primary demand. The demand for a specific brand they call selective demand. And most messages or promotions are trying to achieve attention, interest, desire, and action. I want to grab the consumer's attention. I need to get them interested. I need to make them want to try my product, and then I need to make them actually pull the trigger and buy the product or try it or take whatever action, donate to this charity. You know, these things all apply to nonprofits as well. So that AIDA model is a kind of common thing in marketing, what you're trying to accomplish with an ad. Different types of objectives that you might see. You can have informative advertising where I'm trying to tell somebody how a product works or about some changes to a product or let them know about a new product or new ways to use the product. If it's persuasive, I'm trying to get them to switch to my brand or change their perception. I'm thinking about like when Hyundai went from really promoting themselves as a very inexpensive car to a nicer, more reliable car. Like they're trying to kind of upscale their image there. So they're trying to persuade that. Or it might just be trying to persuade people to purchase now or to talk to a salesperson, something like that. And then sometimes you see reminder advertising. This would be like Coke at Christmas and they have the bears, or the Budweiser ones that they have at Christmas with the and sometimes I think they do it in the Super Bowl too with the puppy and the horses. They don't ever mention beer in there. They're not asking you to buy their product or anything. They just want to keep it in your mind. It's really about maintaining relationships. Sometimes I do this during the off season to keep it in there. But if you think about the Coke and the polar bears or the Budweiser and the puppies, you know, they do it every year. They don't mention beer. They don't show the beer. They do anything like that. So I'm not trying to inform them about the product. I'm not trying to persuade them. I'm really just keeping it up there in their minds. This would be more for a mature product. You would do that type of thing. So then the next thing is the budget, and we have a variety of things. The affordable method is probably what most people use. After all my other expenses, what do I have left for advertising? And so that's really, from a marketing point of view, the least desirable. Percent of sales is another common one. Again, you just take the sales revenue times a percent. That's sort of backwards, right? Because in this way, your sales are what's driving your marketing budget, and it really should be the other way, right? If you increase your marketing, you should be increasing your sales. So this one's really kind of backwards, but it's easy to figure out, and a lot of people do that. Comparative parity, I just do what my competitors are doing. You see this a lot with, like, let's say Coke and Pepsi. I bet they spend exactly the same amount on advertising. So certain market structures, this is going to be very common. The most effective way would be this objective and task, where you say, what am I trying to accomplish? So what's my objective? What steps do I need to get there? And then how much are those going to cost me? And you work it back that way. Fewer people do it that way, but that's the more scientific. So that's the opposite, really, of the percentage of sales. What am I kind of trying to do? You know, I want to increase sales by this. Here's the steps I'm going to take, and here's what's going to cost me to do that. But really, the affordable and percentage of sales are the ones, or compared to these three are the ones you see the most, but this would be the most accurate and make the most sense from a marketing point of view. Developing an advertising strategy. So now we're going to create this message that we're going to do. We develop a concept or a big idea, and then we choose how we're going to. So this would be my unique selling proposition would come in here. What's the big idea I'm trying to get across here? And then how do I want to execute that idea? Execution strategy. There's lots of different ways in here. So this is what I'm talking about here with the characteristics. So it could be the type of appeal that you have. It could be humor. It could be emotion. I could try to scare people. Like if you look at those commercials for home security systems where they show, somebody trying to break in the house, so they're kind of trying to scare people. Any of those types of things. An open-ended message would allow people to draw their own conclusion. Closed-ended, you're drawing them to a logical conclusion. The beginning and end of the message should be strong and include the brand name in there. These are also some execution strategies or some different appeals or characteristics that you get. Musical is think of how many jingles stick in your head. So musical is very common. A personality symbol would be like, Tony the Tiger or the Aflac Duck or something like that. Slice of life just shows average people using it in an average setting. Lifestyle, like let's say you're appealing to very sporty people or something like that. You would do those. Fantasy, there's tons of those. I always think of those Old Spice commercials with the man you wish your man was. Those are a great example of fantasy approach in there. Mood or image, this might be nostalgic or patriotic or something like that. Technical expertise, these I always think of those Sam Adams commercials where they show that guy like sticking his face in all the hops, like he's an actual technical expertise. Scientific evidence would be 3 out of 4 dentists recommend it. Testimonial would be where you have like a celebrity spokesperson, or it could be an everyday spokesperson. So here's Marie Osmond, and here's how much she lost on Nutrisystems or whoever she is. So that would be like testimonial evidence. Depends a lot on the product. There are some things that used to be very serious, more towards these types of things like insurance, and now insurance uses a lot more comedy. If you look at those ones with the what's his name, Mayhem or something like that, or even the ones where they clap their hands and their guys. Clearly, it's not 100% effective. If I can't remember what the company is, but you probably are familiar with the ads. Once we have our message, then we have to select the media that we're going to do. And so this would be newspaper, radio, billboards, whatever it is. You have to decide on the reach, frequency, and the impact. So the reach is the number of people in your target market that see that ad. The frequency is the number of times they're exposed to that ad. The impact is a little bit harder to measure. That has to do with how much they see it. Like I could drive past that billboard every single day and never look at it and not even notice it's there. So even though the frequency is high, the impact is non-existent because I didn't notice it. The major media type, so I have a little thing on those, but this would be, TV, magazine, newspaper, that kind of thing. Then once you select that, you would actually select the vehicle. So not just TV, but which show or which channel and which magazine and which news station. And then the timing. You can do burst timing where you see a whole bunch of it and then you don't see it for a while and then you see a whole bunch of it again. Or you can have more consistent timing where it's every Tuesday or every day at 8 o'clock and that kind of thing. In the PowerPoint from my in-person class that I posted up there's a bunch of examples of bad ad placement because sometimes, you select all this stuff, but you don't have control over really where it goes in the magazine or in the newspaper. And so I have some examples of some really, really unfortunate combinations of things that these two ads should not have been placed side by side in a magazine or billboard. But so if you have some time, those are kind of funny. You might want to look at those. And then this is just the different mediums, the advantages and disadvantages of each. So television is great mass market coverage. You can get a lot of people. The cost per exposure is low. The total cost is high. TV is very expensive, but you're reaching so many people that the cost per person is very low. It doesn't stick with people, but it does have, you can use motion, sound, sight, all of these things. It's very dynamic, and so it can really appeal to a lot of senses. The internet is it's low cost, it's immediate, it can be very interactive, it can be highly selective by websites. The audience, though, can really limit what they see and don't see. So it might be hard to get to some people that way. But it is low cost and can be very effective. However, you can see you ignore the banner ads most of the time. Probably you don't even notice so many of these ads that are coming up there. Newspapers, very good locally, high believability. There's a lot of credibility with a newspaper. However, they don't last that long. They're not nearly as pretty, so that's kind of a downside there. Direct mail, the biggest advantages are it's highly selective, very flexible. You can customize a letter to a certain person, very personalized. You can really you really segment very effectively, though. However, you've got that junk mail. It is kind of expensive per person because you're mailing it out, and a lot of it gets ignored because it's junk mail. Magazines can be very specific to a certain demographic. They look good, and so they seem more credible, high quality, and they're very pretty. It does take a while, though, so there's kind of a long lead time, and they are expensive, and this was the position that I was talking about there. They can really, some of that can really be unfortunate if somebody's not looking. Radio, nice low cost, nice specific demographics, very fleeting, low attention. Generally, people are only half listening to that or skipping that. And then outdoor would be like billboards, high repeat exposure. You drive past that every single day, low cost, so that's good. Again, a lot of the people that are going to be seeing that are not actually part of your target audience, so you're not being nearly as selective there. Okay, so that was advertising. Let's talk a little bit about sales promotions. Again, this is I want you to act now, okay? It's a short-term incentive. It's less about building brand loyalty, more about getting somebody to do something right now. So coupons, contests, rebates, all of these types of things are very common customer promotions. Business to business does a lot of these trade promotions as well, to get either get the manufacturers trying to get the retailer to push the product or something like that. Oh, yeah, loyalty programs. So many stores have those now. They're using that to build those customer relationship things, but also to get people to keep coming back. So those are all different types of promotions. Oh, yeah, and then you've got conventions, trade shows, that type of thing, sales contests. These would all be business to business. Business to business one. Trade allowance, where I give you a discount if you can push my product for me, or free retailer, free merchandise to retailers to get them to push the product. So lots and lots of promotions in business to business. And we talked a little bit about this one in a couple chapters ago, I think, but the push versus the pull strategy. So a push strategy involves promoting it through the middlemen and like the wholesalers or retailers, and get them to push the product to the consumers. Where so the efforts here are focused on the wholesalers and retailers. A pull strategy is when the efforts are focused on the customers and you actually get them. I think I might have shown you this one before. So here's the push strategy. This is where I focus my efforts right here. On a pull strategy, I go straight to the consumer and get them to ask the retailers and wholesalers to carry that product. So I think I might have showed you that one before, but that's that one. All right, so that is advertising and promotion, and we will talk about the other elements of the promotion mix in the upcoming chapters.